Welcome to your Daily 5 for Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. Criterion Channel has added several horror collections for the month of October. I've already reviewed at least two movies from that, which was Dr. X and the 30s version of The Island of Dr. Moreau, or The Island of Lost Souls, I should say. That's the actual title of the film. But that was from their pre-code horror collection. For this week, I went into their art house horror collection, which is, I have to admit, one where I've seen more than half of the films in that list. So it's an area I'm very comfortable with. The pre-code horror one, that was movies I don't think I have seen. I may have seen two movies out of that whole list. So that was much more of there's almost all new stuff here. Whereas art house horror, I've seen many of these. And they're great, but I've seen many of these. But I saw one that looked interesting from 1978 called The Shout, starring Alan Bates, Susanna York, and John Hurt. Now, the synopsis of the movie is fairly simple. It says that there's different versions of it, but basically it's that a intense, strange man insinuates himself into the household of a married couple in a rural town in Britain. And that is, on its face, correct. And in fact, when you read that, you might think you know what movie you're into. This is not an unusual trope within horror, the idea of a mysterious stranger who shows up and starts to disrupt a household. This has been done many, many, many different ways, many, many different times. But this movie, I think, does stand out because of the way that it's made. Not necessarily the story itself. The story itself, like I said, has been done. This type of story has been done a bunch of times. But I've never seen it quite done like this. And a lot of that is in the way that the score is used. It's a magnificent score to the film. It's by two of the people who were part of the band Genesis back in its early days, so in its more experimental days. And they did the score, and I have to buy it. It is wonderful. It is, I don't know, it's just the whole movie is dreamy and atmospheric, and just, it almost feels like it exists in a different dimension. The whole movie feels like that, the score does, the way the movie is filmed, and it is a movie that is very open to interpretation. When you get to the end of this film, at least when I got to the end of it, I could think of three different versions of this film that could all be true, meaning how I interpreted the story elements and what I think actually happened. And that is due to the fact that we are told very early on, and this doesn't really spoil anything, I'll get into this more tomorrow, obviously, I'll have clips and stuff, but we are basically made to know that we are being told a story by an unreliable narrator. Again, not a very new convention. It's used many times in stories. It's a great way to kind of keep the audience on this off footing where you don't know what's necessarily something you should believe or not, but it allows you to construct, in some ways, the story yourself in terms of what you choose to believe happened or didn't happen. And that's what this movie does, and does it expertly. Now, I'd never heard of this movie, but I had seen it was very well received. This is a movie that is well loved by a lot of people. I just never came across, partially I'll admit, because I'm not usually one to get into the, intruder in the household movie. I've seen those. I generally don't really enjoy them. So I took a chance on this one because it's Criterion. And when Criterion puts something in front of me, I generally tend to trust it. So I'm very glad I did. I love the movie. I really, really, I think this movie is expertly done. It's the small cast, they're all great. And I do love a movie that does an ambiguous story well. I've said that. I don't mind vagueness in a film in terms of what it's saying, what's happening, and what the end is supposed to mean, as long as it's done well. And I think this movie does it very well. I also tend to think, at least to me, that what happened or what I believe happened is pretty well telegraphed. But fact is, when a movie's well made in this type of style, it doesn't mean that if somebody else argues something different, I'll think that they're wrong. That's what's great about movies like this. That may frustrate some people, but if you like those type of movies, and there was a very Lynchian vibe to this one too, and I use that label a lot, but in terms of the way that the dreaminess of it, not so much what the subject matter is, although you probably could apply some of that there, but there is this nice ethereal kind of almost nightmare at times quality to things, like waking dream thing, and I just had a great time with it. So again, 1978, The Shout. You can watch it for free on several services, or if you have Criterion Channel, it's on there. And like I said, if you're like me, you don't generally like the intruder in the household things, give this one a chance. It ended up being really good. You might get a good time out of it. Later.